Hello. In my last video, I introduced the first of three fundamental cosmic laws that govern everything that happens in the space-time universe. The law of one, which I introduced last time, governs how everything in our universe is related. The law of three governs how something new comes into being, new phenomena, new worlds, new outcomes, new possibilities. And the law of seven, which I will deal with in my next video, governs how anything that exists develops, evolves, and is transformed. So for this video, I'm going to introduce the law of three. And for anything new to arise, this law says that you need three independent and equal forces: an active or affirming force, a passive, denying or resisting force, and a reconciling or neutralizing force. And it is the interweaving of the three that produces a fourth in a kind of higher or new dimension, or it's a new creation. So that which is created is not just the continuation of the old, it's not just the next thing that happens in a sequence of events. It's something that exists at a higher level of being. And whatever it is, it has the potential to be the start of a new creative process. Now, there are lots of examples of this law in the natural world. You can think of a sailing ship where the wind is the active force, the sail and the keel are the resisting forces, and the skill of the helmsman is the reconciling or neutralizing forces, enabling the vessel to proceed and sail to its destination. So the seed that contains the potential to become a plant is an active force. The soil in which it is buried is a passive or source. And the reconciling force is provided by the rain and the warmth of the sun. And the bean sprout that emerges is no longer a seed, but a plant. That is, it exists at the next level up from the seed. A child is begotten through the interaction of sperm, which is an active force, ovum, passive force, that have come together through the reconciling force of lovemaking. So the child is not simply a continuation of the life of the parents, but a new life with a whole new horizon stretching before her, and the dynamism of manifestation which is actually imprinted within her. Without the third force, you simply have a tension between two forces. Now, you can illustrate that in lots of different ways. So, for example, one of the problems in the way that politics is set up, where you have effectively only a governing power and an opposition, which is like the positive and the negative forces, is that you do not reach good conclusions, good solutions. Um, and in our own personal experience, the tension between what you want to do, which is good, and then discovering that there is something within us that is kind of at war with what we agree with in our mind. And actually, St. Paul found it in his own experience, and he writes about it in one of his letters to the church in Rome. He says, "I delight in the law of God in my inmost self. In other words, I want to do what is right. But I see in my members, in my body, in my being, another law at war with my mind, making me captive to the law, what he calls the law of sin that dwells in his members." Now, by law of sin, he's actually simply referring to the passions that are the emotional drivers of our ego personality. So couples having an argument, or people who take different sides of an issue on which they agree, that's the same problem. You've got two forces. And whilst a compromise is better than continuing to argue, it rarely satisfies both parties. As I said, democracies with only two parties or those that may have more, but they operate in the first past the post voting system that favors the two main parties, are rarely able to reach a consensus because there are only two forces, as I've said. So, however, we need to understand, though, that the resistant or denying force is not a problem to be overcome, but is essential to the new arising. No resistance, no new arising. The enemy is not the problem, but the opportunity. Hence, the problem will never be solved by silencing or eliminating the opposition, but only through enlarging our hearts sufficiently to hold the tension between the opposites, so that out of that creative tension, a new possibility can open up. And in order to be able to discern what the third force is, one has to be in a state of relaxed but attentive presence, with a mind that is open to seeing options that are counterintuitive. The third force is invisible to human beings in the ordinary state of consciousness. And this is due to the way we've been educated. We are hardwired to think in dualistic, black and white, either-or ways. And it is the conscious and voluntary struggle between the yes and the no that calls for the third impulse, or the reconciling impulse. Now, St. Paul said that that third force was a reconciling power of grace that operates under a different law, not the outward laws of religion, which is ineffective as a third force, but the law of the Spirit that gives life. And under that law, the active and passive roles are reversed. And this is often the way which we find the reconciliation is we have to reverse the roles. So ego then becomes passive, and divine essence, which is there in our sort of psycho-spiritual DNA, becomes active. So resistance is felt and acknowledged, but not in control. Instead, the evolving essence, the divine psycho-spiritual DNA with which we are born, emerges as the powerful active force, and we are given the courage to face the reality of our divided nature and the many contradictions of our ego personality, so that our true self, reflecting the glory of our divine origin, our source, the source, however you call that, can grow. So that's the law of three, as briefly as I can explain it. But in my next video, I'm going to start talking about the law of seven. Thank you.